Hello supporters, welcome back to another video on the channel. I hope you're doing well, because today we've got plenty to talk about regarding our West Ham. And before we get into the main topic, we need to update you on an important situation involving one of the most talked about players of the season. My friend, let us get straight to the point because this is one of those stories that shakes West Ham supporters immediately. El Hadji Malick Diouf, the youngster who arrived quietly, took over the left-back spot and became one of the few genuine bright sparks in a heavy, draining season, ended up causing a real storm after saying, very early in his Hammers journey, that he imagined himself playing for the giants of Europe. It was not exactly what supporters want to hear from a new signing, especially in a moment where the team is nowhere near delivering what the fan base deserves. And it went down badly. Very badly. But now, only a few months later, Diouf has launched a full-charm offensive, trying to reconnect with the supporters and rebuild the bridge he shook himself. And the truth is that this effort only works because, despite the natural highs and lows of someone so young, he quickly became one of the main figures in the team. Looking at this season and seeing Diouf as one of the frontrunners for Hammer of the Year says far more about the chaos around him than about the player himself. Yet it is impossible to deny that from his first match, from his first bursts forward, from his first wide smile, he brought something genuinely different. A breath of fresh air in a squad stuck in the same gray tone, match after match. West Ham paid heavily, brought him from Slavia Prague for £20 million, and even then, it feels like the club secured a raw gem on the verge of exploding into something bigger. Nuno Espirito Santo even called Diouf a beautiful boy, highlighting the huge potential of the youngster. And that came during one of the darkest periods of the season, when the team seemed buried in problems on and off the pitch. Diouf became a sort of light through the fog, always smiling, always encouraging teammates who are often far older than him, and always facing the Premier League with that blend of boldness and innocence only a 20-year-old can show. Of course he had tough games, of course he showed inexperience, but overall, he has been one of the few reasons for supporters to switch the television on with even a flicker of hope. And if there is a sign of true importance, it is the board's panic at the idea of losing him for up to 6 weeks because of the Africa Cup of Nations. A club in crisis does not panic over just anyone. It panics over someone essential, someone who affects the team's structure, someone who, despite being young, has already become an emotional and technical anchor. And that someone, today, is Diouf. But alongside the impact came the dangerous side effect, interest from bigger clubs, inevitable speculation, and most importantly, the player's own desire to aim higher. That was when things turned sour. In an interview while away with Senegal, Diouf made it clear that he saw himself in the future playing among the 5 biggest clubs in the world. For many players, such a sentence would barely cause a ripple. But for West Ham supporters, who value every player who embraces the club fully, it sounded like a slap in the face. The memory came instantly. Carlton Cole calling West Ham a stepping stone in his first interview. It caused a fuss, it created noise, and years later, Cole became a cult hero. But he had to do far more than recite pretty words to correct the first impression. The same dynamic began to form with Diouf. Supporters did not question his talent, they did not question his ambition. They questioned the timing, the tone, the lack of sensitivity in a moment where the club needed unity, not personal projections. West Ham fans understand football. They know bigger clubs exist. They know that if the right offer comes, sometimes there is nothing to be done. But they also believe wearing claret and blue is a privilege, and expect players to understand that while they are here, living it, carrying it. And the issue is that Diouf really did sound like someone who saw West Ham as a stop rather than a place. He said he hoped to reach the best clubs in the world, that he had the potential, that he simply needed to work and wait. All perfectly understandable, but said at the wrong moment, in the wrong way. And it took no time at all for part of the fan base to feel disrespected. The discussion spread across social media, became a topic in the stands, and suddenly, the youngster who had been nearly unanimous was surrounded by tension. Now, however, he is trying to correct the course. He spoke on the club's official website, put West Ham in the top 3 moments of his career, and described signing his contract as a dream come true. He smiled again, spoke of goals within the club, of wanting to score his first for the Hammers and live big moments here. And for supporters, that at least opens an important door, the chance to hear him, observe his actions, and judge whether he is truly committed or simply putting out fires. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. When we take a calmer look at everything that happened, it becomes clear that the Diouf situation is almost a portrait of what it means to be a young footballer in a club facing turbulence. On one side, there is the pure shine, a youngster who arrives, impresses, becomes a starter, earns respect on and off the pitch, and suddenly finds himself in a spotlight he never imagined reaching so early. On the other side, there is the reality shock of being in a club that struggles, that suffers, that needs every piece fully committed, and it is in this collision that the noise emerges and the arguments grow. Diouf, for all his talent, is still learning how to deal with this environment. He is still understanding how every word echoes differently when supporters have already embraced him as one of the team's foundations. And this perception became even clearer when he started rebuilding his own image with well-thought-out gestures. By speaking again about West Ham with a different posture, a different tone, and a more mature approach, he showed he did not ignore the discomfort he created. That matters. Because West Ham supporters are not naive. They criticize, react, protest, but they also recognize when someone genuinely tries to correct a mistake. It is not enough to arrive with a rehearsed speech. Supporters want coherence between words and actions. And when he revisited the most special moments of his career, placing his arrival at West Ham in the top 3, Diouf removed the weight from his previous comments and showed a more genuine connection with the shirt he wears today. This movement would not carry as much force if it did not line up with what Diouf has been showing on the pitch. In every match, even during the difficult ones, it is evident that he does not shy away from responsibility, and that speaks louder than any poorly chosen sentence. The youngster drives forward, faces defenders, tries to speed up a team that at times seems trapped in its own problems. He runs when others fade. He tries to create when others hesitate, and his energy becomes a type of fuel for supporters who remain loyal even when the league table refuses to cooperate. That is why the initial irritation with his comments did not wipe away what he has already done. It simply opened a wound he is now trying to close with sincerity and effort. And it is worth remembering that when Nuno Espirito Santo called Diouf a beautiful boy, it was not an empty compliment. It was the description of a footballer who blends innocence with courage, someone who arrives in the Premier League without carrying heavy fears, willing to learn and make mistakes, but always with intensity in every action. That youthfulness sometimes spills in the wrong direction, yes, as with the poorly judged interview. But it is also what turns Diouf into someone capable of changing matches with small moments, whether through a fast recovery run, a burst forward that relieves pressure, or even the presence of someone who radiates lightness in a squad used to carrying weight. Another important point in this reconstruction is the way he spoke about the most meaningful moments of his career. When Diouf places his first call-up for Senegal at the top of his list, he demonstrates pride, identity with his roots, and respect for the path he has taken. Supporters always appreciate players who show genuine connection to where they come from. Then, when he mentioned signing for West Ham as the fulfillment of a dream, he hit exactly the emotional note supporters wanted to hear. Confirmation that, even with big ambitions, and there is nothing wrong with that, he values the present. It is not just a stepping place, it is a significant chapter in his personal story. And when he completed the list by mentioning the Czech League title with Slavia Prague, he reinforced how fast his trajectory has been. We cannot forget that we are talking about someone still at the very beginning of his professional career, 2 years in senior football. It is natural that he is still discovering how to present himself before the press, supporters, and expectations. What matters now is the direction of the change. He made a mistake, realized it, listened, and is now trying to correct it with clear actions. This does not erase his ambition, nor does it need to. Supporters simply want respect for the club while he is here, and Diouf seems to have understood that far better now. The final detail is the way he projected his immediate future. By saying he hopes to score his first goal for West Ham soon, Diouf touches on a powerful emotional point for any youngster trying to establish his identity in an English club. Supporters imagine that goal, imagine the celebration, imagine the stadium reaction. And deep down, this shared expectation helps rebuild the bond. It makes clear that before the bigger steps he may take one day, he still has important chapters to write in London. And if he continues to show this type of commitment, supporters are likely to embrace him again, not because they forgot, but because they understood the path he is trying to follow. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. The speculation surrounding a potential Saudi interest in taking control of West Ham United has resurfaced once again in recent weeks, bringing new life to a long-running story that never seems to fade away. Rumors suggest that investors from the Middle East may be keeping an eye on the club, creating the familiar sense that grand takeover discussions always reappear whenever the political or sporting landscape becomes unsettled. Yet the core truth remains unchanged. Nothing genuinely new has emerged. For more than 2 decades, West Ham have lived with recurring suggestions of Saudi involvement, and their constant return shows how the club has become part of the wider conversation about global investment in English football, even if the gap between imagination and reality remains vast. Looking back, it is clear how far this thread stretches. In 2009, during a time when the financial structure of English football was nowhere near its current scale, Saudi investor Ali Al-Faraj was linked with a possible move to buy West Ham after failing in his attempt to take over Portsmouth. That moment caught attention because it hinted at a shift, suggesting that figures from the region were beginning to look towards the Premier League. Yet, like many similar ideas from that era, the talks came to nothing, and West Ham continued through a period defined by instability and uncertainty. Still, that episode left a lasting impression. If a Saudi bid had been considered once, why not again? Years later, in 2016, the conversation ignited once more when David Sullivan, then the club's majority co-owner, remarked that he would only sell West Ham to someone on the level of the King of Saudi Arabia. Even if the tone was not entirely literal, the comment gained a life of its own. From that point on, it became common to associate the club with the possibility of Saudi interest, as if the door had been left slightly open and it would take only a small gesture to alter West Ham's scale forever. The impact of Sullivan's comment helped create an internal and external perception that the club might one day become the target of a monumental acquisition, lifting their competitive potential to unprecedented heights. Many supporters carried that idea with them, imagining a future in which West Ham could step into the same financial universe as the league's newest heavyweights. The landscape changed dramatically in 2021 when the Saudi Public Investment Fund completed the takeover of Newcastle United. That single act did not just shake English football, it transformed the way the market interpreted anything involving Saudi investors. Suddenly, the idea was no longer distant speculation. It became a tangible project backed by state-level resources entering the Premier League. And once that happened, every club fell under a new type of scrutiny. If Newcastle could be acquired by such a powerful fund, why not West Ham, a historic, well-situated London club with strong appeal and commercial potential? This comparison now shapes much of the imagination surrounding future takeovers. But there is a crucial factor that is often overlooked. Within Saudi Arabia, the state, the royal family, and the nation's wealth are inseparable. No investment of this scale can take place without direct approval from the king, and there is no room for independent maneuvers from individual family members when Premier League acquisitions are involved. This reality complicates any narrative that imagines a second major Saudi move happening soon. Even though Prince Abdullah bin Mosaad Al Saud owned Sheffield United between 2019 and 2024, selling the club to an American group last December, the current context is entirely different. The Newcastle acquisition altered the political and strategic environment so deeply that the notion of another family member receiving permission to pursue a similar deal appears extremely unlikely. That is why this long-running story seems to reach its firmest conclusion now. Despite renewed interest, constant speculation, and the inevitable comparisons sparked by what happened at Newcastle, the likelihood of a Saudi takeover at West Ham remains extremely remote. The club will continue to attract global attention and feature in market discussions, but any such operation depends on a level of approval that, under present circumstances, is almost certain not to be granted again. And for all the noise surrounding these rumors, the reality is that West Ham's future still rests far more on internal stability than on distant dreams of a royal-backed revolution. So that's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, share, and of course subscribe to the channel for more. Take care, and I'll see you next time.